Prosecutors are investigated for bringing a case against a woman with mental health problems. She killed herself days before the trial. Now, the Director of Public Prosecution says she will personally investigate why her staff decided to prosecute a woman with a mental health condition over an alleged false rape claim. Eleanor Freitas killed herself just before her trial was due to start in April. The 23-year-old suffered from bipolar disorder, and she left notes saying she would take her own life because she was frightened of giving evidence in court. Well, the DPP, Alison Saunders, said she'd asked the prosecutors for a full explanation. Ms Saunders also said she would welcome the opportunity to meet with the de Freitas family. In a statement, she said, "I appreciate the family's unease, which is why I'm looking at this personally, in order to satisfy myself of the details surrounding all the stages of the case." It went on, prosecuting cases of perverting the course of justice in connection with an alleged false rape allegation is rare, extremely difficult, and always complex and sensitive. This case, she concludes, was one of the most difficult I have seen. Well, Eleanor's father, David de Freitas, told my colleague Anita McVeigh what had happened to his daughter.
It was relating to a matter that had happened just before Christmas the previous year. And I think she had battled with herself as to whether she should report it or whether she shouldn't. And sadly, that wastage of time worked against her. But she felt both high and low. I mean, she suffers from bipolar order, a mixed state, so she feels high and low states very frequently. And she felt, I think, relieved at reporting it, but also very low and very concerned about having to do so in the first place.
And what did the police say about the case? They were concerned about her vulnerability, weren't they? Completely.
I can't praise the police highly enough. They handled Eleanor very well, and I think the decision that they made was a reasonable and responsible decision.
The decision being that a prosecution would not be in her best interest?
Correct.
But then the individual whom the rape allegation was brought against decided to make a private prosecution. And the CPS then got involved in that prosecution, didn't they?
They did. We actually asked the CPS to get involved because the CPS have the power to take over a prosecution and stop it. And that is what we wanted them to do. What, in fact, they did in the end was they took over the prosecution and, bizarrely, continued with it.
What impact did that have on Eleanor?
Oh, devastating. Utterly devastating. I mean, she was really thinking that they would take the opposite action, and all the logic and all the reasoning that we could possibly look at pointed in that direction.
How do you feel that the Director of Public Prosecutions now is saying that she is going to personally investigate and look into your daughter's case?
It's an appropriate response, but it falls into the category of being a little too late. I think that the proper way of dealing with this is to have a full Article 2 inquest where all the matters surrounding Eleanor's death are brought out into the open and examined, so that there are lessons learned and that other vulnerable young ladies don't go through what Eleanor went through, and that other families do not have to suffer what we've had to go through.
David de Freitas there. Well, joining me now is Lisa Longstaff from Women Against Rape. That's a charity that supports victims of rape. She's worked with women who have been prosecuted and in some cases jailed for making false rape claims. Thanks very much for coming in. Give us first of all your reaction, as we heard from David de Freitas, to the Director of Public Prosecution saying she's going to take a really good look at this case.
Well, I think it's really shallow and hypocritical of her. We have raised such cases with her and with the previous DPP over the last at least 4 years. And, you know, there is widespread alarm among women's groups like our own about the number of women who are being, first of all, disbelieved, secondly, persuaded to retract their allegations, thirdly, prosecuted either for lying because there's inconsistencies in what they have said, or where action is actually taken against the woman on the basis of what the man has said. For example, one of my colleagues has a conviction for harassing the man she accused of rape, whereas he got away without any conviction whatsoever.
You've raised several issues there. I suppose what we need to do on this particular one is come back to the issue that if you are talking about a definite false claim of rape, what should be, in your view, the procedure? Does someone who's made that allegation, in this case, this was a very vulnerable young woman, but occasionally it may be appropriate to prosecute, or would you say not?
I think at the moment we really can't trust the police or the CPS to make these kinds of judgments because the way they handle the cases has been so appalling. You only need to look at Rotherham and all the girls that were prosecuted for being drunk rather than their rapists, being arrested. And I think it's really time that the whole policy was looked at again, from start to finish, beginning with the investigations, through the prosecutions and to the sentencing. And I think it's high time that rape was taken more seriously and that women were stopped being lambasted for being liars and for, what they call perverting the course of justice. That's a very serious crime. There's no reason why they need to charge with that particular charge. They could charge women who they are certain that have lied with wasting police time and go down the route that's taken by the US, for example, where filing a false report is considered a misdemeanour and not a felony offence.
Why do you particularly want to put that in a much lesser category? There would be some men, and presumably few men, but there would be some men who say their lives were destroyed by having false allegations made against them.
Yes, there will be men who say that, but equally there are women who say to us all the time that their lives were destroyed because they tried to report their rapists and nothing was done about that. They never got justice, they never got compensation. And we're absolutely desperate at this point. We don't feel we can recommend people to report to the police because we don't know what's going to happen to them. And where women are particularly vulnerable, we find that, those are the ones who are, A, most likely to be raped because they are easy targets. And secondly, they are the least likely to be believed and have their cases taken to court. We're at the point now where we're having to launch a campaign. We've been campaigning on this for 7 years, but we're launching a much bigger public campaign on the 2nd of December in the House of Commons. And we've even seen women who've been prosecuted for lying who have a substantial sentence, like Rhiannon Brooker. The Attorney General actually appealed her sentence and asked for a higher sentence, and the appeal court said no. And yet there are men who are being convicted of several rapes, a whole series of rapes, and their low sentence wasn't appealed. So I think there's a real double standard, where women have become the suspects in these cases.
It's clearly a wider debate that is going to go on. Lisa, good to have your thoughts. Lisa Longstaff from Women Against Rape, thank you.